conversation. It's the conversation. Y'all ready? Let's go. No filter, no restrictions. You about to get my opinion in its purest form. So my words, don't try to spin them. What I said is what I said. And what I said, I meant it. The gloves are off now when I'm coming out swinging. So engage in verbal combat, but you better be ready. Cause this here for me is light work, even if the topic's heavy. I'm ready for it all with no running from nothing. You just take the time to digest what I put in, no rushing. But time is moving, don't waste it. You want the real, come and face it. Come sit and talk to me if you want it straight without a chaser. And it might burn a little when you step on up to taste it. But it's nothing harsh, I promise. Just a little conversation. It's the conversation. Y'all ready? Let's go. No filter, no restrictions. You about to get my opinion in its purest form. So my words, don't try to spin them. What I said is what I said. And what I said, I meant it. The gloves are off now when I'm coming out swinging. So engage in verbal combat, but you better be ready. Cause this here for me is light work, even if the topic's heavy. I'm ready for it all with no running from nothing.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the conversation with Harold and Dave. There's Harold. I'm Keone. In the spirit of Black History Month, here's this.
What do you think Martin Luther King Jr. would say about a nation that purchased food for starving kids and then locked it in a warehouse until it expired and incinerated it, rather than giving it out so that 27,000 starving kids could survive meagerly? The biscuits could feed at least 27,000 acutely malnourished children for a month. The biscuits are now likely to be destroyed or turned into animal feed. That article was from 2 months ago. Yesterday, The Atlantic reported that the expiration date on those 500 tons of nutritious food for starving kids was now upon us, and the U.S. had decided to incinerate that food rather than allow starving children to have it. Mr. Egas, you're the Deputy Secretary for Management and Resources. These are resources that were purchased with U.S. taxpayer dollars. They're specifically designed to save the lives of starving children. Why is it a good use of resources to not distribute that food to kids and instead burn it?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I'd have to look into that particular issue and see how those foodstuffs got there.
Can I just interrupt for a second? I asked this question at a hearing yesterday so you would be prepared to know that I would ask it today. And we called your office to tell you that I would ask it today. So the notion that you need to look into it strikes me as a little bit odd. I view it as an intentional thing, because if we suddenly woke up in July, oh gosh, the expiration date is today, that would be one thing. But in March, there was a request by the World Food Program and others. Look, if you're not going to distribute it, maybe you've decided the U.S. that starving kids are no longer your thing, but you have this asset. If you're not going to distribute it, we'll distribute. So it's not a mistake if you've been on notice of it for 2 months and you've made the decision to keep the warehouse locked. Hey, you went to Boston University. Who is the most famous BU alum?
The most famous BU alum?
Next to you.
I don't know. I don't want to offend anyone that's graduated from BU. But
I'll tell you who it is.
Okay.
Martin Luther King Jr. What do you think Martin Luther King Jr. would say about a nation that purchased food for starving kids and then locked it in a warehouse until it expired and incinerated it, rather than giving it out so that 27,000 starving kids could survive meagerly for one more month?
Well, we're still the biggest giver of aid anywhere in the world by far. So I think, look,
I'll just conclude. I want to hand it back to you, Mr. Chair. A lot of complicated issues. Sometimes the tiniest detail really exposes the soul.
Sometimes the tiniest detail really exposes the soul. I love the part of, Dave, it's like being a professor. Hey, I gave you the outline when you got here. I gave you the lesson plan. I told you what I was going to teach you. I taught it. Now we get to the test and you act surprised that these were the questions. Or these were the things you had to write about.
I don't even know what we were seeing there.
we were seeing what we see all the time: incompetence.
The incompetence is legion. The incompetence in government is stellar, and is going to be a major thing. They're trying to come up with new words for it among a lot of people that are, even academics. It's and you don't like to see it. You don't. you don't like to claim that something's happening because of incompetence. You usually try to, but there it is, right? And
I,
it's incredible.
I grew up not watching a lot of politics, but every now and then I'd get stuck on the old C-SPAN channel when it came out, and I would be entertained by just watching parliaments all over the world and the US especially. And I watch Senate hearings now, and it's just the level of incompetence is something I've never seen. And it's just like, what is happening? Every time you watch it, you're like, I cannot believe what I'm watching it. And I still can't believe I'm in the state of, I cannot believe what I am watching.
I find it interesting that, it was an open book test. And in my college days, usually open book tests were scary because you never knew where the professor was going to draw from. But I don't know, he gave him the answers or the questions in multiple formats at varying times within a 24-hour period, and you still didn't have an answer for the question, which was sufficient or even truthful. You wanted to pivot over to, well, we are one of the most benevolent nations in the world, or whatever the case may have been, which is what it was. I'm kind of paraphrasing, but at the end of the day, it's still ridiculous the fact that they are not willing to admit they're the ones that's causing all the waste, fraud, and everything else that's going on in our country and in our economy.
Oh, no. Well, why would they point that out? They're too busy enraging taxpayers, telling them that their tax dollars are just paying for transgender sports programs. Moving along. Um, Senate hearings, we're going to get into that. We're going to get into retired Captain Kelly's lawsuit along with the Attorney General, but let's address the elephant in the room,
Oh Lord, these elephants.
the State of the Idiocracy address. No, the State of the Union address. It's State of the Union address because we're supposed to be one big happy union, but yet again, the president, who Obama, by certain people, have been called the divisive president, cleared his entire State of the Union to get one side of the room to stand up and clap and the other side to sit down the entire time. I have never seen a president do a State of the Union and attack for 45 minutes plus his opposition repeatedly with
It's not a
lies and things
union
that
at
have not
that point,
happened.
is it? You
With,
know?
hold on, I'm gonna turn it to you, Dave. I was almost finished with that. With lies about things that haven't happened, that he said happened, and then the promises of things to come that probably won't happen. Okay, go ahead, Dave.
Well, I mean that's a more substantive point, but obviously it's not a State of the Union, right? There's no union. Um, but the lies, the outright distortions, are legion,
Mhm.
uh, and in so many ways, and just lying about but they're the same lies. I mean, in a lot of ways, Trump came in with the same lies he's been saying, that he inherited the highest inflation. And in fact, he inherited 3% inflation. The 9% inflation was in 2022, and Biden had brought that down. Um, and, he came in with the same lies, but at another level, what strikes me about this speech was, on the one hand, I thought it was going to be a slobbering idiot up there, right? I thought we were going to see him break down. He did not. He actually stood and delivered much better than we've been seeing him do, and so that was good for Trump, But at the same time, what he delivered was not just a lie, but it was politically stupid. He came in repeating the lies that he started. But this year, instead of blaming the current conditions on Biden, right? Because he deployed the same lies last year, saying this
Mhm.
is how terrible it is. This year he comes in saying, look how terrible it was, Now we have a golden age. He goes to this hyperbole about how wonderful it is. And the thing is, Americans don't think that, right? I mean, the lie here, he's trying to tell Americans, don't believe your eyes, don't believe your experience going to the supermarket, don't believe the price of the gas you're putting in your car. And not only that, Americans there are strengths to the economy. There is a disconnect between the fundamental statistics of the economy and the polling preferences or perceptions of Americans. But he goes in and tells them it's not the way you think it is. But at the same time, and here's the punchline, or the thing that really gets me, he's owning it. He is saying it makes a difference who your president is. So what he did, he lied to say the economy was wonderful and then took explicit credit for the economy. It is no longer Biden's economy, it's his. And the thing is, if Americans don't buy the first part of that message, if they say, well, no, the economy kind of sucks, and oh, yeah, that is your fault. And that to me was the stupidest political move he could have made.
Well, Harold, are you going to believe me or your lying eyes?
Well, hey, listen, I've had LASIK surgery. I used to wear glasses. I mean, so my eyes have deceived me from year after year. So apparently I'm not seeing what he's saying, but nonetheless, I'm seeing what I'm seeing. So if you can unravel that, good luck. But in either case, it's more, for me, it was more of the same. You know, you had variances of, what specific topics he was hitting on. But even in looking at and listening to the various sound bites and different things that people wanted to elevate as far as conversation was concerned, it's almost the same old, same old. Even to the point to where now, people were upset at, I think there's a couple of discussions about Ilhan Omar and what she said during what she was doing during the State of the Union address. And I'm saying to myself, wait a minute, how quickly we forget that Marjorie Taylor Greene was extremely rude to Joe Biden, during the State of the Union addresses. And Joe Wilson started this, back when Obama was
Is that the one
the
that
president.
stood up and yelled, "You lied"?
Yes,
Hmm.
that's Joe Wilson, South Carolina. So, when I hear this, and this is why, I couldn't waste brain cells trying to process what I knew was going to be a plethora of lies or
He had a point,
untruths.
Harold.
But,
Obama was the
it is
first
what it
president
is.
to
I
tell a
knew it was
lie.
going to be more of the same. So, hey, I didn't watch it, but yet, with all the tidbits that you saw from today's conversations, you pretty much get the gist of what he was trying to disseminate as far as misinformation.
In his defense, Harold, Obama was the first president to tell a lie. So
Which one was that?
what?
I'm just trying to, I always ask for specifics. When people come to me with stuff, give me specifics. Which what? Which one? What was it? And they never can. Or either they'll go to, well, he said you wouldn't lose your doctor. Well, he didn't lie. Go read the bill. The
You
bill
know
didn't
what my
say you had to get another doctor. Your doctor chose not to accept the ACA or whatever it was. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. We're not going there.
you know what my favorite part, Dave, because you don't always have to get my silliness in, is watching JD Vance at random times look lost and confused, and then being reminded, oh, it's time to, oh, everybody's standing and clapping. Let me get up.
Yeah, that's our next president there.
No.
Oh,
Oh,
I would go to be surprised if we don't have at least some Vance. If he's not 48, I'll be amazed. Because that'll mean that Trump survives to the next election, and he's old. I mean, he's old and he's sick, and
yeah. I
so
got you.
I'm kind of am looking at that as, but that's another story. Um, Although Democrats need to keep in mind, in the long run, they aren't going to be running against Trump. They may be running against his legacy, but the next time in the midterms, they can run against Trump. And if Trump does what they're talking about, right, the insanity of this. their strategy is to have Trump go out. And, you know, Gavin Newsom or I've seen people like saying, we'll pay. They're saying they'll send Trump or they'll send out his cabinet secretaries. And there are people on the Democratic side saying, please send them to critical districts. We will pay for it. And the thing though is just this speech was written for Trump. This is the speech Trump wanted
Hmm.
to give. It wasn't the speech that they needed to give to Americans uh, to save their bacon. And that I think is going to be very significant. Even though he kept it together, he didn't do many of the things. Keone and I had our bingo cards, and
Hmm.
many of the things that we had on there, no, he didn't ramble, ramble, ramble. He didn't.
Well,
Uh,
he did it.
he did not. Well, not according
Okay.
to the AI.
I guess it depends on
Um,
it
he
depends on what you consider rambling, because I consider rambling when he
he
talked
stayed on
about,
script.
well,
He stayed on. I mean, he might have had his sides in his delivery. He might have improved a bit, but that was not what I would, what was expecting.
okay,
Uh,
hold on, because I want
So
to
the
make a
lies were
distinction.
written in. That's what you're
Wait,
saying.
wait. Yeah, I want to make a
oh,
distinction. Are
oh
you
yeah.
talking about he didn't ramble because he didn't go off rambling about something that had nothing to do off topic to what he was talking? Or I'm speaking, I think that's what's on the bingo card we're talking about, because my rambling is when he did things like say, and the economy is doing so great, that I had people walking up to me all the time saying, stop, we're doing too good. We were
We're
always
winning.
losing. We were always losing, and now we're winning, and we're tired of winning. But
Tell
you're
them to
going
go
to
to
win
Iowa.
again. You're going to
I'm
win
sorry.
again, and we're going to win some more. That's rambling to me.
I think that was written. I think that was, that's him delivering that message. But interestingly, I did see a segment. They have a lot of people analyzing things, right? And so one thing you do is you get a group of people, and and while they're watching, they have a little dial, and when they like something, they turn it one way, and when they don't like something, they turn it other. And so you had the constant feedback on how they're feeling about it, and they have Republicans, independents, and Democrats, right? So they got three lines going along. When he started that segment, all three of them cratered. Everybody
Oh
turned
wow.
their dial. Everyone swiped left on that one. And so and including Republicans. And so again, these guys are not, they're screwing up.
Yeah,
Another,
but they also stood and cheered 90 million times, which was just
but
performatively ridiculous.
but the thing about that, I won't say it was half-hearted.
Hmm.
I'll say it was three-quarter hearted. Okay. Because as I watched it and I watched them cheering, the USA chants lacked verve, right? And you kind of saw that when suddenly the hockey team comes in and you got genuine applause. I just felt there was this very low energy to what they were doing, that they're going through the motions in a way. And so I just kept getting that vibe from it, that you're staging this, you're all playing your part, but you aren't really enthusiastic, and so that was my thing,
Well,
my
Harold, the males hockey team's on my crap list right now, and you know why. Why is there only one of them that had the balls to say, "Yeah, I'm not coming"? No, it's okay. I'm never going to get on teams for turning down going to the receive anything from the president, whether it's Clinton, whether it's Obama, whether it's Trump. If you don't want to go, you don't want to go. But if you knowingly heard what you heard, maybe you couldn't react in real time, but you see usually the backlash gets people to change their mind.
Right.
And for all of them to sit there and laugh when he said what he said about the women's hockey team, okay, I get it. Maybe it was an awkward laugh. It's the president. Haha, you laugh, you giggle. He's on the phone. But then where's the recourse after? No, we'll just go with it. But hey, the goalie got the Medal of Freedom because, he played hockey. So there's that. I, what's happening? Good. I
I
can't even
would
do a
listen.
show.
All this
Dave.
talk about Epstein and what's been going on with that, I'd be surprised if the women want to go to the White House. That's just me speaking out loud. Uh, because again, all the distractions that we've experienced, and even to the point to where the extreme actions and activities that have transpired over the last few weeks, you know, surrounding one, the release of the Epstein files. First of all, you redacted everything, released those pages, and then there's I guess someone figured out that hey, listen, all they did was color it using what Microsoft Word. So they copied the PDF into Word and unredacted it. But nonetheless, then you chose to go to another extreme where you ended up releasing everything,
Well, do you
victims
know
as
also
well
that the
as
world?
then you
Yeah,
redacted certain high profile names that you didn't want to get out into the public.
well, no, talk
But
about this.
nonetheless, getting
They
back over to
redacted.
the women's hockey team, I wouldn't have been offended if I were them, if I were their
Oh,
coach.
can
But
you hear
listen,
me?
we didn't want to go anyway, so hey, enjoy your boys.
Well, the thing about the redaction was they redacted a bunch of high valued names, but they didn't redact the victims' names.
That's what I'm saying. I said that they didn't redact the victims, but they were quick to redact these high level players.
They
But
went
wait,
to.
and there was something with FedEx. I don't
Uh-huh.
know if you saw that. There was part of the file where a FedEx account of Jeffrey Epstein was there, and it had names and addresses of where he was sending different packages or getting mail from. And one of those happened to be some unknown person who lives in subsidized housing in Washington D.C. But the other, what happened? But the other was also someone in a high position, I think, in Israel that may have also been kind of caught up in that whole mailing snafu. But where they got the information from was the unredacted information happened to also include the password to Epstein's FedEx account, which allowed this news reporter to get access to that information.
Oh my
So it's going to be
gosh.
interesting. It's going to be interesting when this comes out.
Incompetence. That was the theme of the day. I started the show with incompetence.
Governments don't set the bar for competence on a good day,
Yeah, but it's never been,
but
Dave, this
but
bad.
these guys have just explored new. It was like hold my beer, you
What,
know.
Mm,
Dave, tell me the group chat that was leaked during the Obama administration. Tell me the group chat.
mm.
Do you know any?
Tell me who's still working for the government the next day after that. Accountability, you know.
Oh,
Um,
that's a
but
dirty
this
one.
is this is loyalty. This is the loyalty world. Your 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 merits, your qualifications don't matter. Your performance doesn't matter. Loyalty does. This is dictator shit. But it's dictator behavior
Mhm.
in a system that isn't a dictatorship, and you know, we're seeing that in all the approval ratings and all these special elections that are being lost by Republicans. We're seeing that
Court
it
denials.
doesn't play in a democracy.
Yeah, court denials. The Supreme
Yeah.
Court and all the even judges that he nominated and Republican judges in there saying no, that's unlawful. You can't do this. You can't do that.
They can
Um,
only stretch a point
And,
so far.
and
and
I
even in some of
remember
those special elections, the majority of the wins have been by progressive candidates, which is an interesting piece for me.
I remember in the beginning when he was running the first time and the second time, when he would make certain comments and people will say, "Oh, he's just tongue in cheek. It's rhetoric." He says things like, "Yeah, Canada can become the
51st
51st
state.
state, and
Yeah.
Iceland and Greenland because he doesn't know the difference, and going into Southern American countries." And a year ago, people's like, "Ah, he's not going to do that. He's just saying stuff." Well, he's already done Venezuela. We know if it wasn't for the Mexican president saying, "Yeah, please don't do that," he would have been in there already. We saw what just happened in Mexico recently with
Mm-hmm.
the the capture and death of the cartel boss, and I don't say their names on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I don't know. It's like I can't even talk. This is how annoyed I am at the incompetency and the stupidity that I'm watching on a daily basis.
I'm just I'm just
And
waiting for my
you know
turn.
one thing I love that's happening?
Hmm?
These people, when they have videos of Obama, oh yeah, Trump was not happy. I guarantee he was not happy that Obama and Michelle were at the All Star weekend and got a rousing
Oh,
ovation because he doesn't get that when they go places. And JD Vance was at the Olympics and getting booed by U.S. and foreign country citizens. So that's always funny. It's
well,
also sad, but
even when you look at the All Star game, no matter where he goes, he doesn't try to get courtside or on the field. He's always in the box, away from the people. So if you want to be
well, I'm not going to
accepted
fault
and
him for that. You know
have a
why?
warmer reception, you got to be more people oriented. Which I know that's not a part of his personality because he's demonstrated that for as long as we have got to really, really, really know him.
Okay, but I'm going to pull a Dave here. I'm not
Oh,
going to blame that one on him because most of the time when people are the active president, they are in the skyboxes. And most of the time you saw Clinton sitting amongst the people were after his presidency. You know, you saw Bush doing that mostly. I'm not saying they never did, but you saw more of that after the presidency rather during the presidency. So
I
I
don't
got to give him
follow
something
well,
hockey,
but
so
but
I
sometimes.
but
don't
think
know
about
what
it
goes
though.
Look,
on.
I
Remember
can
now, he
dump on
wasn't.
him for 99% of the things. I can give him 1% of something.
Yeah, but I guess he wasn't going to those events when he wasn't president between his two terms. So we really, don't know if he would have still been going to the box or
Well, he couldn't go to those events. He was going to court.
stop it.
All right, Dave, I'm sorry. I got off the rails here. Bring us back.
Oh, please, let's talk about the economics. Please, tariff. The only thing I
First of
like talking
all,
more about than Ukraine is tariff.
I let some people watch
Love
the
it.
debate between you and you know who this
Oh,
week.
Jesus. That
Oh,
was
I
not
saw
my
a few
finest
brain cells.
work,
Oh.
to be honest. I
No,
was
I'm
not
gonna talk.
on.
I'm not gonna go over that, but there's a part where I showed them that I love that you did, and I need to make it a clip. Is where we were talking about economics, and you just reminded me when you said that, and you were talking about economics, and then he brought up something about President Biden, something, and you just cut him off, and you said that's obfuscating and irrelevant, and you just kind of shoved the question to the side. Because that's the
Well,
ploy. That's the ploy. You ask
that's
a
the
question,
ploy.
and the answer is, "Hey, the Dow Jones and the stock market is up." So you need to thank President Trump for that. Forget about the Epstein stuff.
That sounds like Bondi. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
But I just got to say, just got a couple
mhm.
things.
Yep.
His the most outrageous, delusional lies were
Mm.
the segment where he talked about the tariffs, where he talked about how it
Ugh.
was unfortunate that the Supreme Court did it. And then he goes into this discussion of how he has better authorities. He is going to, nevertheless, he's got more power with the other authorities he can use because and that nations were wanting to keep with their deals, right? And that was the other things he says are, the inflation claim. Oh, I got Biden had the record inflation. He did, but it was 2 years before Trump. So the thing is that there's at least a grain of truth in this. There's no truth in what he said. Those were out
But
and out lies. And he does not have better authority, and nations do not want to keep with their agreements. And in fact, the idea that agreements exist is a fabrication. It is a fantasy
Mhm.
because you don't have trade agreements with these nations. You had vague commitments. But when you look at him saying, "Oh, we have these things," the EU had made concessions to Trump, and they were going to vote on it back when he was in Davos. right? Who was doing the Greenland shit. They shat on his agreement. So they all of, and that's the freaking EU, right? China and India, they're not happy. They're kind of like, hey, you don't have the ability to put these tariffs on us. Why should we do any of whatever this we agreed to do? Um, he does not have he never had the authority, but he under IEPA already exceeding what he could do. But under the new law he's using, Section 122, which is something like no one's ever heard of because it's never been used before. It was passed in the 70s to allow in this little period of time between the gold standard going off the gold standard and floating our exchange rate. There was a period of time where the US maintained fixed exchange rates, and you could get balance of payments problems if you tried. And so the president was given this authority to use tariffs to address a balance of payments problem. I know this is getting a little bizarre, a little deep in the weeds, but as soon as we floated the exchange rate, they don't they never occur. There are no such things as balance of payments. If you have a balance of payments crisis, you don't have it. The exchange rate, the value of the dollar just moves up and down to keep an automatic balance. So this section is obsolete. It's kind of like a governor finding out, hey, there's a law in the books that says to respond to an Indian attack, I can mobilize all the able-bodied men and confiscate whatever property I need. So let me use that, right? Because it's fixing a problem that just doesn't exist. And it only lets you go 15% for 150 days. And, it's a temporary thing. So this is bullshit, right? This statute will be overturned, but it may not. The tariffs under it might not last long enough to get to a court challenge. What government in the world is going to take action to permanently change its policy to avoid a tariff that has to be taken off in 150 days? That was just outright outrageous. Actually, he believes it, I think. And I thought
Mm.
that was some of the most delusional crap of the whole speech.
Well, my question would be is, and I want to go back to where you talked earlier about the whole inflation piece with Biden and how it went up, and so on and so forth. You know, I hear COVID being used when to give Trump an excuse, but it's not consideration when it impacts what Biden had to deal with. And I know we had the Inflation Reduction Act, so on and so forth. So, how do we, I guess, balance the two? Because I already know, and you continually see how there's always excuses or a different standard when it comes to one president versus the other president. And so, how do we balance that, or how do we come back and say, listen, how can you say it's good for him, but then use it as a penalty against the other party?
I think a big thing is that presidents don't really have the control over the economy the way you think they do. And that's the thing I tried to say in that debate, and that was two steps of logic too much for a surgeon, apparently. But the thing it's amazing, right? Your guy's a smart guy, but the thing though is that said, Trump does amazingly stupid stuff, right? Presidents normally don't affect the economy too much because they stay within the lines. And, there's always the saying, if you want to affect the economy in the US, if you want to affect economic policy, you get your picture taken with the president, but you meet with the chairman of the Fed, because that's really the important person. And Trump, nevertheless, does not stay within the lines. The inflation that Biden inherited was COVID, right? I mean, when economists looked at it, there were two things. There were the supply chain disruptions,
Mm-hmm.
resulting from COVID that jacked prices on a bunch of things and sent inflation up. And there was the fuel price increase, right? Because Trump would talk about, he mentioned the fuel prices. And yes, we had some really expensive gas in the early part of the Biden administration, which, oh, by the way, that part of it, the inflation was nobody's fault. That was just the way the shit worked out. And oh, by the way, the way you fight inflation is high interest rates, which
Hmm.
Trump was against, but that put that over there. Trump during COVID made a deal with the Saudis to increase or to decrease
Decrease,
production,
right?
to decrease it because we had this glut of oil in the world. And he put a date. He promised to let them do that all the way
2
into
years,
2022.
right?
And so that those restrictions kept oil prices high all the way into 2022, i.e. Biden. So it's this thing of I want to say, hey, presidents aren't really responsible, but then this dipshit makes an agreement, interferes in the economy in a way presidents are not supposed to do, and actually did create. And so he dropped a grenade for Biden, and now he blames Biden. So I understand that I'm talking out both sides of my mouth there, but it's the thing is that the normally well-behaved president has very little effect on the economy. Trump, on the other hand, has. And by the way, it's always a one-sided thing. You can totally crash the economy. You can hurt the economy as president dramatically,
Well,
which is
well, is it because people made statements, he makes threats, and I think it's because he makes threats, and that's why he's one of the presidents that affect the economy.
well, he does, and it's the thing is the ability of the governments have kind of a ability. You can make business more expensive by taxing it,
Mhm.
right? You can screw up markets by doing surprise things, and you can have bad policies. Having good policies that actually make things better, wow, that's really tough. And so I always say that governments have this one way, there it's easier to have a negative impact than a positive one. And so Trump and so presidents, um, well, not all of them, but Clinton and Obama, um, really they had the advice, uh, and they stayed within the rail. They didn't criticize the Fed. They never commented on exchange rates. They didn't do anything to shock the bond markets, and so they were very well behaved.
Oh, they were acting presidential. Got it.
Yeah.
Harold, this is where Dave goes messes up, and people call him a leftist lunatic because now he's praising Obama and Clinton. It isn't wonders why he gets the flack he gets.
That's
Um,
okay. I got his back.
you, you got
Ready for the smoke.
you
This is
got his
not
back.
just Coke.
This is crazy making threats. Harold, I would be remiss. It's Black History Month not to talk about. We lost Jesse Jackson um, recently, and I saw a lot of people. There are a lot of people that put him in the same boat as Al Sharpton, and I'm one of those people. And there's people that don't put them in the same boat. I don't put them in the same boat. And not to talk bad about Al Sharpton, he's done more for
Hmm.
my kind than I have, and his pinky. But when I look at someone like Al Sharpton, I saw a lot more of the I'm going to pick and choose these high profile moments to show up and not always show up at the places that were necessarily needed. Where Jesse was a little bit different. He was also around, he was in that pack with Martin Luther King
Hmm.
and everyone from those days. So that could also play a part in that. But you being the president of the South Miami NAACP, and I don't know if you've ever met Jesse Jackson, but if you just spend a
And I,
second to say what he meant to the community, maybe yourself, anything else you'd like to say.
well, first and foremost, I don't think anyone agrees 100% with anyone, no matter who they are.
Mhm.
I love Obama, but I don't agree with 100% of what he did. When he served as president and or as senator. Nonetheless, but with Jesse Jackson, first of all, he was a fraternity brother, Omega Psi Phi. Uh,
And here we
I
go.
had a genuine respect for him. Like I said, I didn't agree with everything. His approaches sometimes I thought were um, sometimes too aggressive. Sometimes I thought I just didn't agree with a certain approach at times. But nonetheless, the work that he sought to do in fighting for equal rights and fighting for uh, various things to uplift the black community, it doesn't go unnoticed, or it didn't go unnoticed. And so, I send my condolences to the family, and his families, friends, fans, those that are grieving at the moment, and hopefully God will continue to strengthen them and give them peace during this time. I applaud the work that he did. I definitely know that he did leave a template for future advocates to follow or activists to follow. And whether they modify it or tailor it to fit their respective communities, that's something that's out there for us to learn from, to glean from, and hopefully to grow from. But I think also when we look at the work that he did and how he did it, and he was not ashamed. He was very open. He was very honest. He was very upfront. In challenging the status quo. Uh, I learned a lot after he passed what happened during his presidential run and certain things that transpired when he said certain things that kind of made a large swath of people pull back and away from him. And so sometimes you got to know how to I won't say censor, but you got to know how to tone what type of tone you need to convey your various messages with various groups, and you have to be sensitive and respectful of everyone. And the moment you have one group or uh, uh, one, I guess, yeah, one group of people who may not have appreciated your approach to certain things, rather than try to go and sit down and have that conversation. And I don't even know if that door is open to them or closed. I don't know. I was kind of just getting out of college at that time, so I mean, just getting out of high school at that time. So I really wasn't deep into to in '84 the political spectrum. But nonetheless, as a result of his work, we have again a lot to draw from to hopefully move forward and create other leaders that would like to take up his mantle and forge ahead. So I'll land my plane there.
Well, since this is a political show, I mean, one of the biggest things, we biggest proponent of voter registration drives and voter acts and policies. But one of the biggest thing he did was after that 88, I think 88 was the last, 84 and 88. Those were the two
Correct.
campaign runs, right? And one of the reasons Obama got elected is because of that Democratic Party reform on what he did, going away from the super delegates towards a more open and
Hmm.
proportional representation. And people didn't know what happened in those lower elections when things would happen. You weren't there was no transparency. Um, so he got that changed. That's one of the things that came out of him running for president on two different attempts.
Yeah, true, true. I mean, his reforms did open the door and create avenues and opportunities for others to tread a similar path. And so again, all we can do is be respectful and grateful for what he did, whether we agree with it 100% or not. That's not up for discussion at this point in time. But nonetheless, you
He
know,
didn't know it was going to take 30 years after he did that, but
but hey,
we were all fortune tellers.
it worked.
If I may,
Yes, go
Yes,
ahead.
sir. Please.
and the white guy come in on this.
Here we go.
This is always, I just love it when
You know,
it's Black
if
History
you're
Month on this show.
look, if you're not gonna make the views go up by saying, as the white guy, the hell with Jesse Jackson. If you're not gonna do that, then it's not worth
No,
the
Stop it.
talk.
what I
I'm
am going
sorry.
to
Go ahead.
say about it is, no, Harold is, Harold is they're issues. Okay, it's a problematic person, but first of all, people that are leaders of movements, these are egomaniacal sons of bitches, and they are not perfect people. They are not people we want to have dinner with usually. And I don't care white, black, anybody. you are going to be the kind of person who has an affair, right? Because that Bill Clinton did it, right? I mean, and Jesse Jackson had those problems. He's going to try to go into things. The thing is that he's not lionized, right? He's there, and we see him with all his warts, all his mistakes, and he doesn't get a pass, right? He doesn't get a pass on this. The thing about him is, I was watching the retrospective, and there was the shot of him when Obama was being inaugurated, and he is crying like a baby. And at that moment, I said, "Look, I am looking at this person, a person, because again, it's about people, but treating people like people." And I said, "No, that guy, whatever he did, whatever his ego, whatever, he is genuinely happy and humble, and in that moment." And so I said, "Yay, sir." I was like, "Okay, whatever ever we want to say, you had the right intent. You had the right place in history. You were there. You did shit. You did absolute shit. And maybe later on you made a misstep. Maybe you took a position that wasn't good. Um, but you were there. You were fighting, and so I stand and salute with far less. At this point, I can say it just seems like we want everyone to be Martin Luther King. If Martin Luther King hadn't
He still
died,
wasn't perfect.
Well,
he wasn't perfect.
he's still
He
Right.
was brilliant. He was.
yeah.
I got a book on strategy. There's a whole chapter he is put up in terms of his strategy,
Hmm.
as by Lawrence Friedman, who wrote a book on it. There's a whole chapter talking about him, and so he is seen as being someone who can get. But in that chapter, they note that what he did in Birmingham didn't work when he moved north. He failed a few times.
Hmm.
But Jesse Jackson, was out there fighting, and in the end, I saw what I saw impressed me, that his heart was in the right place. And so, judge not lest you be judged, I would say.
Well, the one thing you
Almost
said
definitely.
is they're
Most
people,
definitely.
right? And here's the
Now
thing.
people are going to hate that I
It
took up for
is
him, but
one of the things you said is they're people, right? And people make mistakes. It's easier to make these type of mistakes when you're in the fight than when you're sitting at home on the couch watching football and that's your life. Go to work, come home. Go to work, come home. You may not make as many mistakes as someone who is in the fight. And none of these people are perfect, like we said. Martin Luther King, we put him on the pedestal, which we should. But there could be certain people that say, the LGBT community back then wasn't that fond of him because of things he would say. Take that as you wish. And I had a conversation with somebody the other day that was saying, we were watching a video. Martin Luther King came up. He said those were men back then. They didn't have all the mental health issues that we do now, because that old trick, right? I said, well, you didn't know he attempted suicide twice when he was a teenager? No. Why would he do that? Depression. Well, I didn't know that. Well, maybe you shouldn't open your damn mouth when you don't know what you're talking about.
was that Dr. King or Jesse Jackson?
Dr. Martin Luther King.
Okay.
Martin Luther King.
Yeah, because
So,
why wouldn't you back then?
well, he had some deaths in his
PTSD.
families and
No,
all
no,
types of things, but you know,
and you're treated like shit, in ways that we can't conceive of. And
yeah.
this is my thing. Like with people knock on feminists, and you go back and you say, "Hey, here are the rules for women. We would never accept this. We would never allow this." And that's how we treat our wives and mothers, and we being people that look like this. And you know and the thing is, like, it's amazing that there wasn't more suicide amongst marginalized groups of people, to me, right? And these guys were I mean, not that you all I mean, just the amount of shit that those folks had to take was outrageous. And not that people don't take shit today, but it was a different order of magnitude. And
Yeah, and you also had an entire agency of the government targeting you,
Oh yeah. I mean,
harassing you, bullying you, intimidating you. You
let's
had
be
teach, so anybody would say, listen, I might as well listen. The only way I can get rid of this is to do me.
I mean, it doesn't help, you
No,
know.
it doesn't.
I mean, you aren't getting any help from anyone, um, and so yeah, But
Well,
also, I mean, there's another level at which mental health it's a problem, and we it maybe it is a thing that even if things aren't great, mental health problems
they
create
had a
problems.
lot
So
of
True.
depression. Like everybody looks at segregation and they look at what the black students went through having to go to all white schools and they focus on the violence, but they didn't focus on the depression of education. And what I mean by that is what they were finding. So there was a lot of black people in black communities that push back on segregation that we don't even talk about that. And the reason was because the education level. And people, when I say that, they think, well, yeah, they were undereducated. No, they were finding out and they were thinking these black kids were exceptional because they were getting better grades than the kids in that school. You know why? Because white people as a whole, when they were going to college and getting higher education, they weren't coming back teaching elementary school. They weren't getting a PhD teaching elementary school or middle school or junior high. But what was happening in the black community is these people that were being able to go to Harvard, being able to go to Yale, being able to go to Boston University, being able to go, they would come back and they're teaching elementary school. They're teaching middle school. They're teaching high school. And then these kids, when segregation happened, would go to the school and they're like, wait, I learned this 2 years ago, you know? And so this is what was happening in that community. We didn't get to talk about Senator Kelly because I mean, not Senator Kelly, Captain Kelly's lawsuit. We'll get into that if we don't have more relevant stuff to talk to you later. I wanted to end on some Black history stuff. So let's talk about, I'm going to go over these. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw out the top five, as a top 10, top five Black myths and give you the fun fact. And then we'll, both of you have a rapid fire
Oh
response
hell,
or
why am
remark
I getting
to it.
dragged into this?
Okay. All
This is
right.
what I really, why couldn't you have a Game of Thrones podcast?
All right. Here we
Jesus
go.
Christ.
Myth number
Oh,
one.
I'm
And
losing
this
that one. I haven't
myth
seen
number
one
one,
episode, so
and myth number one angers me a lot.
talk to me.
Because I coach talent, and normally when I see Black kids, I normally see two parents. But myth number one, Black families are mostly fatherless. That's a narrative that's always been pushed. And the fact is, the majority of Black fathers are involved in their kids' lives, often more involved daily than fathers of other demographics, according to the CDC data. Presence does not always look like marriage. Involvement is high across co parenting structures. I'm going to give these myths and facts, and then we can just wrap it up as a whole with some remarks. Myth number two, Black families depend on welfare. We've attacked this one on this show before. Fact, welfare usage reflects poverty rates, not race. Most people on government assistance in the U.S. are white. Black families work at high rates, often juggling multiple jobs due
Mm-hmm.
to wage gaps. Myth number three, Black families are chaotic and or unstable. Fact, Black family units are historically among the strongest community-based structures, rooted in multi-generational support, shared caregiving, church communities, collective parenting, i.e. it takes a village. Next myth, Black families don't promote education. Black families have a long tradition of fighting for access to education. From Reconstruction to HBCUs to modern advocacy, Black parents consistently place high value on academic achievement despite systematic barriers. That myth right there also bothers me because if we weren't trying to access education, we wouldn't have made HBCUs.
I was
There wouldn't have been
thinking
a
that.
need for HBCUs, right?
What'd you say, Dave?
No, I was thinking exactly that as you were talking. So
Yeah, so I wanted to just talk about before we got off is narratives because narratives are always the things, whether we're talking Trump, whether we're talking any other propaganda, or especially when we're talking right now during Black History Month wrapping up, talking about the narratives that are put on Black people. Out of those myths that I talked, the two that bother me the most are the education and the fatherless homes, because that narrative is just always painted. This every Black child is just running out here without a father, and I feel like it's never going to stop, and it's incredibly annoying.
And what's interesting to me is I think about Disney's movie. Remember, what was it?
Song of the South.
No. The
Oh,
one with Denzel Washington, the football team.
okay.
Remember the Titans.
Remember the Titans.
And when
Denzel.
he forced them to get to know each other, and one of the kids even said, asked the kid, one of the white kids players asked the black player, "You do know your father, don't you?" And I'm saying to myself, that stereotype continues to be played
Hmm.
even through Hollywood.
Yeah,
And that's why it's so ingrained in our society. And we keep hearing that narrative over and over and over again, in spite of the data saying otherwise.
David. You know Denzel Washington's name is actually not Denzel.
Well, it's not pronounced that way, I think. I thought.
Did you know that?
I'm
I heard him in
sorry.
an interview say it, but
So his name, he told the story in an interview, and
Yeah.
no one knew it till he did it on one of the late night talk shows. His name is actually pronounced Denzel. That's his. He's a junior. His father is Denzel Senior, and he's Denzel Junior. And it sounds like a joke, but it's really serious. His mom, he said his mom got so tired of every time she yelled Denzel, because married people don't call each other mom and dad or husband. They call them by their first name. Every
right.
time she yelled Denzel, they both would come running, or they'd both answer. And she got so annoyed. She said, "I'm tired of this. You're Denzel, and you're Denzel." So he's been Denzel ever since that day. I never knew
Renamed
that.
by his
It's
mama. I
crazy.
love it.
I just remember, was it Whitney on Different World with her poster of Denzel Washington? She said, Denzel, and I cannot get that out of my head. That lives in my head
Oh
rent
my
free. And
God.
yes, I watched Different World. All right, I
Yeah.
don't, not too proud to admit it. It was
Did
Why
funny.
wouldn't you watch
Did
Denzel?
you see the
I didn't
outtake
expect you
from that?
just to watch MASH.
Did you see the outtake
I
from that?
thought Whitney was a great, actually, that was a great TV show because there's nothing like an all black cast to not have token characters and to have Whitney's and to show you different people and to not have a stereotype, to not,
Yeah, too bad Bill
um,
Cosby ruined that show because he didn't want to show a 20-year-old pregnant.
well, yeah, okay, let's leave Bill Cosby out of all future discussion.
Yes, yes. Let's
You
do that. Let's do
know?
that.
But
But did you
again,
see?
but
But they did.
again, but again, if you Bill Cosby's humor, I mean, this is what's so difficult to deal with these things. Bill Cosby's humor was transformative, you
Hmm.
know, and
Unless you ask Richard Pryor, but go ahead.
I mean, you know, and at a time of introducing people, when I was a kid, right? My parents, white people, but they all had every comedy LP he did,
Oh my God.
and talk about, and he's also out there. He is a father. He is talking about themes of fatherhood and family. And I remember I was in Maine with my family, and it was like our first trip, and I'm the stepdad,
It just sounds.
and my baby girl hates me. She wasn't my baby girl then. My kids hate me at this point, and we're having a whole hard time. And we had a Bill Cosby. We put a Bill. For some reason, I got a Bill Cosby CD or something,
Oh
and we
God.
start listening. We all start laughing, right? And it saved the day, and it saved the trip. So what do we do with that, right? We have, and maybe this is a cancel culture thing, but he talked to a lot of things and brought up a lot of stuff. And, you know, so yeah, but, yes, different world. I always said that was the great thing, is it showed you all different people.
Mm.
And, it was kind of like going in the army, the place where I start getting out of whatever preconceptions I have is when I'm living, eating, and sleeping in a group of people, a third of which are black. And, and now you're allowed to comment on people. I was brought up like you didn't even want to say that someone's black lest someone think you were racist. And people would be like, "Oh, that's freaking stupid." you know. And
Yeah,
so
but
I always
hey,
felt that was so important and transformative. So, all right, I just opened a whole bunch of
I mean, the difference,
Yes, you
David,
did. Oh.
the difference is you slept around a bunch of people that were black, but the difference is they never put Spanish fly in your drink.
Stop it.